Hello everyone and welcome to another video. This time we are talking about the first impressions that the Rings of Power left in the shill media outlets, of course. So Amazon has released the embargo on the Rings of Power, and these people can now freely, and I'm using the term quite lightly with major air quotes, freely talk about their first impressions upon watching the first two episodes of The Rings of Power, and they have been conveniently comprised and collected in an article written by Variety that we are going to delve into. The article reads, quote, "The Rings of Power first reactions praise Lord of the Rings series as big, bold, and beautiful. The Lord of the Rings of Power, Amazon Studios' ambitious fantasy series based on the works of author J.R.R. Tolkien and reportedly the most expensive television series ever made, premieres September the 2nd on Amazon Prime Video. But as the social embargo lifts, critics and fans who have seen the first two episodes ahead of time are flocking to Twitter to share their opinions on the highly anticipated series." So as you can see here, Variety is saying that these are still stories based on J.R.R. Tolkien. If you remember, some people said that they were loosely inspired, that they were just delving barely into, but now they are saying that it is based on J.R.R. Tolkien again. So once again, we have no agreement on whether this is an adaptation or this is loosely based. Nobody knows, but what we are interested in right now is the first reactions. So let's go into that. Universe's Eric Francisco said, quote, "I've seen Rings of Power and I can say for certain you're in for a treat. Big, bold and beautiful to behold. TBD if it'll sit alongside Jackson's films or deserve Tolkien's name." Spoiler alert, no, it doesn't deserve Tolkien's name at all. It doesn't really. And we are talking about a story that has tried as much as it can to subvert everything that Tolkien wrote about the Second Age and the characters that we see here. Mainly the characters of Elrond and Galadriel, and we, the fans, real Tolkien fans, and I mean real Tolkien fans as people that have read the books and know these stories very well, we know that it's not deserving of that. We also, I question if this is going to be worth of being in the same level as Peter Jackson's films, because if you remember, those films were really crafted out of love. This is crafted out of the necessity to make money, so no, I don't reckon that is going to be real anytime soon. But as you might expect, also Francisco takes time to talk about quote-unquote the toxic fandom. There are fandoms out there, there are fans out there that really don't like this thing, don't want to see it, and think that it is the worst thing ever, and they are horrible people as well. Yeah, go take a hike. Go take a hike, Eric. I think that we can do without your stupid opinion in that regard. I thought that Francisco was going to be the only one that was going to talk about the grandiosity, the boldness, and the beautiful nature of the spectacle, then think again, because that seems to be the full shill mode that everyone is going to be operating under when it comes to this show, as one would expect, of course. So we won't have anything about storytelling, the writing, or characterization, but we have a lot about how beautiful it really looks. You don't believe me? Let's take a look at some of these opinions. Brandon Katz, quote, "Okay, so the first two episodes of Rings of Power are a spectacular sight to behold. The scale, scope, ambition and grandiosity is unrivaled on TV. Curious, right? Knowing about how the characters were written, how the story goes moving in these first two episodes. Knowing at all, right? And we don't want them to spoil things, of course they can't, but at least that they talk a little bit more, save for the fact that this is beautiful. We really don't have any other thing." Salem here, Rodrigo Salem. Quote, Rings of Power is a cinematic experience. In a perfect world, we would watch it on a big screen. It's pure Tolkien and yet feels very connected to Peter Jackson's movies. The effects are brilliant, the action is superb, and the prologue itself will destroy any awful feeling you had. So it's trying to sell us the idea that this thing is going to be great, but it's not telling us anything else, right? Yeah, if you hated it at the beginning without knowing anything about it, you are going to love it now. But it's also talking about how beautiful it looks, special effects, the acting is perfect. We can really not be sure of that when we are having activists and not really actors in here, right? But anyways, that's the opinion of this pathetic person. We have Davan Kurgan, quote, I've seen the first two episodes of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Note, how they phrase things in a similar fashion? And they are a total joy. Watching it feels like stepping back into Middle Earth. I cannot wait to see where the story goes. Well, it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but alright. Not much substance, just I can't wait for it, shilling for this thing, of course, as you would expect. Stacey Lambie. Having seen the first two episodes of Rings of Power, similar phrasing, I have to admit, I was surprised how much I liked it. Yeah, you were maybe surprised at how much you can shill, for having this early access, because that's the only thing that you really want, don't you? The lush and expansive series very much breathes new life into the franchise, and that's also another problem. This is not really a franchise, it is a work of art. It's a text, the text exists, and we all love it. So we would really appreciate it that you respected it as well, And it is a show that I think people will enjoy once they allow themselves to be sucked into it. So you have to allow yourself to be drawn into it, to be taken by it. So it takes time and it is hard for you to really feel soaked into it, which means to me that maybe it is hard for the fans, or that it's going to be so contradictory that many fans are just going to say, that's it, that's enough, I'm out of it, I'm tired of it, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. We also had here Cat Moon, who said, I watched the first two episodes of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. It's grand, bold, and ambitious. It's always the same thing. And we also have Alex Zolbin. I've seen the first two episodes of The Rings of Power, same phrasing. It is stunningly gorgeous to look at, and the score is beautiful. So that's the thing, no story, no characterizations, not at all. It also takes a while to get going. Okay, so it's slow. There's a lot going on in two episodes, but it's slow in getting going. Alright then. Alright. For fans of the movies, it'll take you right back at points once it's rolling. I find that hard to believe if you are saying that it's a bit slow, but of course it's going to take you back to parts of the movies if this was filmed in New Zealand. Those landscapes, of course, speak to all Lord of the Rings fans. Whether you are just a movie fan or a book fan, you will be drawn to that, of course. Lucy James. I've seen the first two episodes of Rings of Power. I really dig it so far. It's slower and I'm savoring all the build-up. Beyond a couple of cheeky nods, it's not trying to be Jackson's trilogy. Well, let's hope that it is not trying to do that, because it's really, I don't reckon that it's going to be capable of doing that, to recover that sensation. Again, no characterization, nothing about the story, nothing more than, oh, it's bold, it's ambitious. Yeah, alright, but nothing of that tells me that it is good, okay? Nothing about that tells me that the story is good, that the writing is okay, that the characters are okay. Nothing of that. Being bold, being ambitious, that doesn't mean that you have a gold mine in your hands, or that the work is correct. It just tells me that they were aiming high, but did they really get it? Did they really get there? Did they really got to that point? Because it doesn't really feel like they did. Of course, I saved the best for last, and we have good old Clifford Bradway, that man that works for the OneRing.net, and of course is the shill of shills, the maximum expression of shilling out there in the Tolkien fandom, and says, quote, first impressions of the Rings of Power, first 2 episodes, vivid, ebullient, highly cinematic, enriching, earnestly heartfelt, bit outside the box, ready to win your heart, ready to start hardcore law debates. Everyone wins. Let me just eviscerate this a little bit. It's vivid and ebullient. Okay, whatever that means. He's always grandiloquent like that, but highly cinematic and enriching. Enriching what? What is exactly getting enriched here? Your own ego, your own pocket, or your list of axes that you want? Because otherwise, I don't see how this enriches anything. And I give you that, it's highly cinematic, yeah. And of course it's going to be vivid, because it's meant to be like that, given that they spent like 2 billion on this thing. But even that does not tell us a lot about the story or the characters, and even that is not enough apparently for them to have decent costumes. Earnestly heartfelt? Well, that sounds more like a subject, and it's alright. It's your first impressions, that's okay, but it doesn't really tell us anything about the story or the characterization. Bit outside the box, just a bit. For what I have seen in the trailers, it looks like they have just went out of control, and they have not cared about respecting Tolkien in the least in this thing. Ready to win your heart? Whose heart are you really talking about? Those quote-unquote fans? The normies? Because let me tell you that most Tolkien fans are against this thing simply because it contradicts the law. Simply for that reason, Clifford. And you have forgotten about that. And that also adds to what you had to say later on. Ready to start hardcore law debates. You really are going to go there when you and all of the OneRing.net have left and right blocked, banned, muted, whatever, all those fans that have complained and have claimed that this contradicts the law, and you have deemed them toxic, you have deemed them nitwits, you have called them almost every name under the sun. You have been defending this piece of shite all the time, since the very beginning, and you have had no bloody shame in doing it. And now you're telling me that this is going to start hardcore law debates? Maybe it is, but not in your site, not on your mentions, not there on your posts on Twitter, that's for sure. There's not going to be space for that, because according to you, there's no room for toxic fandoms. There's no room for discussion of this thing whenever you are posting anything. So everyone wins. Who really wins? Amazon sure is going to win something at least. Maybe you are going to win something with the early access and all that crap that you just crave and that you are whoring yourselves for. But other than that, I don't reckon that anyone is going to win absolutely anything. So there you have it, folks. The first impressions of these people. Most of them, if not all of them, shill media individuals, shill media reporters with major air quotes, shill media journalists also with major air quotes of all these shill media outlets. That's all. So can you really trust them? Can you really believe in them? I don't think that they are being truthful, and of course there are going to be values that this thing is going to have, but how many of those are going to be real? How many of those can we really crave or praise when they are trying in every step of the way to subvert Tolkien and to change what he wrote? I don't reckon that looks good, at least not for me as a Tolkien fan, and once again, and I will continue with that, I urge anyone who has a mind to not pay attention to this thing. But let me know your opinion down below in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.